Somebody was sharing with me after the last Mass what they had heard one of their grandchildren say. When they were asked, what's the definition, what does it mean to be blind? And the child, apparently in class or whatever, said, well, that means you can't see till you put your glasses on. I understand. But I read something this week that I'd never thought of before. We talk about Jesus giving sight to the blind. For those who maybe had sight before, and because of maybe some sort of a head trauma or accident or whatever else, they temporarily lost their sight. When they got their sight back, it would probably be very exciting for them. But can you imagine for somebody who had been blind from birth, who had never had their sight, and then to be given that sight? You'd be seeing everything for the first time. You wouldn't know what or who anything or anybody was. You wouldn't know that this is the color green. You wouldn't know that I'm a good-looking guy. Many people with sight don't know that. But just, can you imagine the absolute shock to your system? You can see, but you have no idea what it is you're seeing. It's amazing. Bartimaeus was very definite. He said, Lord, what do you want me to do for you? And he said, Lord, I want to see. Good for him. Do we say that to Christ? Lord, I want to see. Lord, I want to see the way that you see. Fact is, folks, not sure if you realize it, 2 months from today is Christmas. Gasp. Shock. See, we've got to start preparing. Costco's got several months head start on us. So, I want to share a Christmas story with you, but I think to do that, we need to get into the proper festive Christmas mood. Thank you. They didn't applaud at the last Mass. There were some who were quite, they were quite, yeah. So I don't want to lose my congregation just yet, so for sharing the story, making sure you get into the Christmas spirit, I'll go a bit more traditional. There was a man who went out in the dark night to borrow live coals to kindle a fire. He went from hut to hut and knocked. "Dear friends, help me," he said. "My wife has just given birth to a child, and I must make a fire to warm her and the little one." But it was late at night, and everyone was asleep. No one replied. The man walked and walked. At last he saw the gleam of a fire a long way off. He went in that direction and saw that the fire was burning in the open. A lot of sheep were sleeping around the fire, and an old shepherd sat and watched over the flock. When the man who wanted to borrow fire came up to the sheep, he saw that 3 big dogs lay asleep at the shepherd's feet. All 3 awoke when the man approached and opened their great jaws as though they wanted to bark. But not a sound was heard. The man noticed that the hair on their backs stood up and that their sharp white teeth glistened in the firelight. They dashed toward him. He felt that one of them bit at his leg and one at his hand, and that one clung to his throat. But their jaws and teeth wouldn't obey them, and the man didn't suffer the least harm. Now the man wished to go further to get what he needed, but the sheep lay back to back and so close to one another that he couldn't pass them. And so he stepped upon their backs and walked over them and up to the fire. And not one of the animals awoke or moved. When the man had almost reached the fire, the shepherd looked up. He was a surly old man who was unfriendly and harsh toward people. And when he saw the strange man coming, he seized the long spiked staff which he always held in his hand when he tended the flock, and threw it at him. The staff came right toward the man, but before it reached him, it turned off to one side and whizzed past him far out into the meadow. Now the man who had come up to the shepherd said to him, "Good man, help me and lend me a little fire. My wife has just given birth to a child, and I must make a fire to warm her and the little one." The shepherd would rather have said no. But when he pondered that the dogs couldn't hurt the man, and the sheep had not run from him, and that the staff had not wished to strike him, he was a little afraid, and dared not deny the man that which he asked. "Take as much as you need," he said to the man. But by then the fire was nearly burnt out. There were no logs or branches left, only a big heap of live coals. And the stranger did not have either a spade or a shovel with which he could carry the red-hot coals. When the shepherd saw this, he said again, "Take as much as you need." And he was glad that the man wouldn't be able to take away any coals. But the man stooped and picked coals from the ashes with his bare hands and laid them in his cloak. And he didn't burn his hands when he touched them, nor did the coals scorch his cloak, but he carried them away as if they had been nuts or apples. And when the shepherd, who was such a cruel and hard-hearted man, saw all this, he began to wonder to himself, "What kind of a night is this, when the dogs do not bite, the sheep are not scared, the staff does not kill, or the fire scorch?" He called the stranger back and said to him, "What kind of a night is this? And how does it happen that everything shows you compassion?" Then the man said, "I cannot tell you if you yourself do not see it." And he wished to go his way, that he might soon make a fire and warm his wife and child. But the shepherd did not wish to lose sight of the man before he had found out what all this might mean. He got up and followed the man till they came to the place where he lived. Then the shepherd saw that the man didn't have so much as a hut to dwell in, but that his wife and babe were lying in a mountain grotto, where there was nothing except the cold and naked stone walls. But the shepherd thought that perhaps the poor innocent child might freeze to death there in the grotto. And although he was a hard man, his heart was touched, and he thought he would like to help the child. And he loosened his knapsack from his shoulder, took from it a soft white sheepskin, gave it to the strange man, and said that he should let the child sleep on it. But just as soon as he showed that he too could be merciful, His eyes were opened, and he saw what he had not been able to see before, and heard what he could not have heard before. He saw that all around him stood a ring of little silver-winged angels, and each held a stringed instrument, and all sang in loud tones that tonight the Savior was born, who should redeem the world from its sins. Then he understood how all things were so happy this night that they didn't want to do anything wrong. And it was not only around the shepherd that there were angels, but he saw them everywhere. They sat inside the grotto, they sat outside on the mountain, and they flew unto the heavens. They came marching in great companies, and as they passed, they paused and cast a glance at the child. There was such joy and such gladness and song and play. And all this he saw in the dark night, whereas before he could not have made out anything. He was so happy because his eyes had been opened that he fell upon his knees and thanked God. Lord, I want to see. We do. But what do we see? What are the eyes that we use? Yesterday at the deacon ordination, Bishop Peter spoke about the fact that in a recent audience, Pope Francis was asked, what does he consider to be the most important thing for priests of the future to have? What would he like to see in priests more than anything? And Pope Francis said, I would like to see priests who are kind. We can look at our world in lots of different ways. We can see lots of different things. It's a matter of what we choose to look at, what we choose to focus on. Many of us have learned through bad life experiences, through disappointments or hurts, to see only the things that are wrong, to look for the bad in others so that I can judge them, so that I can cast my opinion on them. And the more we train ourselves to see that way, the more we see that way. Bartimaeus said to Jesus, Lord, I want to see. In the story, the shepherd didn't want to see the good, but nevertheless, through an act of compassion, of kindness, it's like he put on new eyes and a new heart, and he saw so much more. And it was glorious, and it was joyful. And if we want to see those kinds of things at Christmas, we need to start preparing now. Lord, I want to see, not through my anger, not through my bitterness, not through my fear, but I want to see through your eyes. I want to see that it is possible for me to bring forgiveness into my family. I want to see with eyes that are hopeful. I want to see the world the way that you see us. Because, Lord, you see us through the eyes of love. Lord, I want to see. If we want to see that way, so our Christmas will be better, we need to start now. We only have 2 months.